Cynthia M. Anthony, Cynthia M. Anthony, Anthony.
Good morning, Mrs. Anthony.
Good morning.
The monitor kind of blocks our view of each other a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would be better.
How's that?
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Maybe I'll go this way.
Well,
Okay.
we go that way.
There are things I'm going to be showing her on the monitor, but the
Yeah,
way
I
it's
can see the
positioned, it's
monitor.
hard to see.
Okay.
Please tell us your address.
4937 Hope Spring, it's one word, HOPESPRING Drive, Orlando, Florida, 32829.
That address is within the confines of Orange County, Florida.
Yes, ma'am.
How long have you lived there?
Since October of 1989.
Have you lived there with anyone since 1989?
Yes.
Who would that be?
I'm sorry. My husband, George, my son, Lee, and my daughter, Casey.
Okay. In 1989, when you moved into that residence, had you lived somewhere else in Florida, or did you come from a different state?
We moved from where I was born. We moved from Ohio.
Okay. And prior to 1989, had you lived in Ohio your entire life?
Yes, ma'am.
When you moved from Ohio, how old was your son Lee that you mentioned?
I believe he was almost 7. I think it was before his 7th birthday.
And you also mentioned your daughter Casey. How old was she at that time?
She had turned 3 in March of that year, so about 3.5.
When you moved from Ohio, were you immediately employed?
I didn't realize I had to wait a month for my temporary license for Florida. I had my Ohio nursing license, so for the first month, I applied immediately, but it took a month before I could get my Florida permit, so I started working around November.
Did you have family in Florida?
Yes, ma'am.
Who was already here?
My parents had just retired to Florida previously in 1989, and then my in-laws, George's parents, had moved, or they were actually called snowbirds. They were in Florida, and I have a brother that lives in Florida.
Did your children go to school in the area where your home is?
When we first moved, we enrolled Lee into first grade.
Okay. And at that point, was Casey too young for
Yes, ma'am.
school?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is there an elementary school in your neighborhood currently?
Yes, ma'am.
What is the name of that elementary school?
Hidden Oaks Elementary School.
Did either of your children attend Hidden Oaks Elementary School?
Hidden Oaks was actually completed the year that Casey started kindergarten. Lee had previously attended Rio Pinar, which is not too far away, but we had to drive him there. And so when Hidden Oaks opened, when Casey started kindergarten, I believe Lee was in 3rd grade. I'm sorry, it was about 3rd grade when they started at Hidden Oaks, which was right in our subdivision.
How far is Hidden Oaks from your house?
If you go down to the end of our street on Hope Spring, it comes to Suburban, and then Suburban dead ends on at the school. So it's just right around the corner from our home. As far as miles, I don't know. I've never measured it.
Did your children either walk or take their bikes to that school?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. If you're walking from your home to Hidden Oaks Elementary School, how long of a walk is it, even if you don't know the exact distance?
Maybe about 5 minutes.
In 2005, were you blessed with a grandchild?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, who was that?
Caylee Marie.
What's her birth date?
August the 9th, 2005.
Caylee's mother is?
My daughter, Casey.
How long before Caylee's birth did you know Casey was pregnant?
I found out on June 30th that Casey was pregnant of 2005.
And how did you find this out?
I was working and it was almost close to my quitting time, and Casey had come up to my work and she told me she had something very important to tell me, and she didn't want to tell me. At that time, I didn't have an office. It was more like cubicles.
Okay.
Where I worked, and there's just partitions. So she wanted to talk to me in private. So I had the luxury of, being able to step outside whenever I wanted to. So Casey and I actually went and sat in the car and spoke.
Now, prior to this discussion that you had on June 30th of 2005, had you been to a wedding?
Yes, ma'am. My brother, the youngest of my 3 brothers, was getting married. This was his second marriage, and we had planned a trip to Myrtle Beach for his wedding, and he got married, I believe, on June 8th of 2005.
You attended the wedding with Casey?
Yes, we did.
Now, at that time, did you have any suspicion that she was pregnant?
At that time, my suspicion was not, I really wasn't suspicious of her being pregnant up until the day of the wedding. Casey was having some female issues.
Is this something that she told you?
Actually, she had always had issues with her periods.
Okay. So in the months preceding June of 2005, did you and Casey have some discussion about her menstrual cycle?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us what that was?
Casey and I were pretty much on the same cycle, and we would always compare bloating, headaches, all the typical, female conditions associated with it. And bloating was huge with me and Casey. And sometimes we would actually joke about it, talking about whether or not we looked like we were pregnant.
Okay. Are you talking about having a little belly as a result of whatever these premenstrual symptoms were?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. At some point, did it become more obvious to you that any belly that she had was something other than bloating?
Casey started putting on a little bit of weight. Her face started filling out, but she was sedentary at that time because she had just taken, a few months prior to the wedding, she had taken a job in human resources at Universal. And she was sedentary. She was not up walking as much. And, so Casey had issues before where if she wasn't active, she would put on a little bit of weight. And she's so short, she just kind of fills out. So I just thought she was filling out. I really didn't think about her being pregnant.
Are you talking about 5 or 10 pounds?
Yes.
Causes somebody who's short.
Absolutely.
fill
It's
out.
very noticeable on someone of her size.
Okay. Do you have knowledge as to how much weight she gained during the pregnancy in the first place?
As far as when Caylee was born, I don't think she gained more than 18 pounds, or I think it was even closer to 15. She did not gain very much. I think she was pretty much all baby.
All right. Was this a situation that you were trying to hide from people, her being pregnant?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Once you found out about it, what did you do?
I started planning a shower. We notified the entire family. I mean, we called, I think after we came home and told George, we called Lee and Mallory and called my mom and his parents, and we just told everybody.
Did you indicate in some fashion to Casey that you or your husband would continue to care for her and the child?
Absolutely.
Did you make some preparation for Caylee's arrival?
Oh, absolutely. I believe the day that we found out, I think June 30th was towards the end of the week, because June 30th, I remember, it was my parents' anniversary. So June 30th is a very special day, and I remember. And we wrote it in Caylee's baby books and things. So, I mean, it was something well documented. But I think I took her shopping for maternity clothes, and I think we started picking out paint color. We turned our computer room into Caylee's nursery. I think we had it finished within 2 weeks. I mean, we were looking for baby furniture and everything. Because when Casey found out that she was pregnant, at that time, I think she was 7 months,
Okay.
or the end of her 6th month.
Was a theme picked out for Caylee's nursery?
Yes, Casey had already had Winnie the Pooh. When she was 16, she had a Winnie the Pooh room. We had a lot of Winnie the Pooh stuff, and Casey was always a fan of Winnie the Pooh. So it was just kind of like a no-brainer to do Winnie the Pooh.
All right. I'm going to show you what has been previously marked as BC identification. With the court's permission, of course. Can you see that?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Do you recognize it?
Yes, ma'am.
What do you recognize it to be?
Caylee's bed.
Does that photograph fairly and accurately depict Caylee's bed?
Yes, I mean, there's a few things that's normally on it, not there, and the sheet's not on her pillow, but, I mean, the pillowcase isn't on the pillow, but yes, that's Caylee's bed.
Slow it
I'm
down.
sorry.
Miss Anthony, slow it down a little bit.
I will, thank you. Do you need me to repeat it? There are a few things that's normally on her bed, and the pillow is missing a pillowcase, but that's Caylee's bed.
There is a stuffed animal on the left side of the photograph. Is that one of Caylee's bears?
Yes, that's one of her bears.
Does that bear have any significance over any other bears?
No, that one's just one of her bears.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce BC for identification as the state's next numbered exhibit and evidence.
What says the defense?
No objections, Judge.
It will be received in evidence as states numbered.
Permission to publish 37 to the jury, Your Honor.
You may. It should be published now.
Was this poo theme repeated elsewhere in the room besides Caylee's bed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you have Winnie the Pooh curtains,
Yes, ma'am.
sheets,
Yes, ma'am.
baby blankets?
Yes, ma'am.
For you, so you can go to the next one.
Now, you said that you all turned a computer room, or what was a former computer room, into Caylee's nursery.
Yes, ma'am.
Have LG for identification. Sometimes even my glasses don't work. Can you see that?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me what that is?
It's a picture of our house layout.
All right. Why don't you take a look at that for a second and tell me if it fairly and accurately depicts the layout of the house?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, I believe this has already been introduced as States 11.
Yes.
So may I have permission to publish during the witness's testimony?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Mrs. Anthony, if you touch the screen, you will be able to indicate where certain items are. The room that we've been talking about, is it appropriately designated on the diagram?
Yes.
Can you point out to the jurors where that is? Right below it is another room right here. What kind of a room is that in your home?
Well, when we did Caylee's room, that was Lee's bedroom.
All right. Lee, your son lived in the house at the time of Caylee's birth?
Yes, ma'am.
What is that, what is the function of that room now?
Now it's just a spare bedroom, and we put our computer things in there.
How about the next room labeled Casey's room? Is that appropriately labeled?
Yes, ma'am.
This area right here, what would that be considered?
To the left is our living, and then to the right is our dining room.
Okay, that's an all-in-one great
It's
room.
like an L shape.
What is the room off of the dining room?
Our kitchen.
Across the living room, is this appropriately marked as the master bedroom?
Yes, ma'am.
There's a patio designated to the back. How do you get to the patio from the interior of the house?
Either through the master bedroom or through the living room.
Right. Can you mark on the diagram where you would make that sort of entry?
The master, right here, there's sliding glass doors, and right here, there's sliding glass doors in the living room.
All right. Is there any other way to get to the backyard aside from going through the patio?
Yes.
Where else would that be?
From inside the house?
Yes, ma'am.
From the kitchen, there's sliding glass doors right here.
Are there any door or window bars on the sliding glass doors to prevent intruders from coming in or out?
We just have the lock on the sliding glass doors.
Also, noted in the diagram is the garage right here. Where is the front door in relationship to all of these items?
The front door to our home is right here. It goes right into our living room.
Do you normally use your front door to come in and out of the house?
No, because we keep it dead bolted all the time. There's 2 locks on the front door, and then we have a glass entry door that has a triple turn lock on it. So unless someone would come to our front door, we do not go in and out of that door.
What do you normally use as your means of entry into the home?
Through the garage.
If I can show you what's been marked as BU for identification. Unpublished. Do you see the photograph?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recognize what is shown in the photograph?
Yes, it's an aerial view of my home in between our 2 neighbors' home.
Does I don't know, have you ever had this vantage point as it relates to your home?
Not prior to July 15th of 2008.
All right. Do you recognize this as a fair and accurate photograph of your home from the air?
As it is today.
Okay. What changes have been made since 2008?
Well, we have no grass in the front yard, but we actually extended our patio. From 2008, we placed, in fact, last fall, I re-patioed, added more. We took the grass completely out of the backyard. Since 2008, we've been unable to grow grass in the back, so we put pavers here, mulched this area, and my husband extended the patio from here down with a walkway to the shed, a cement walkway to the shed.
Aside from those changes, cosmetic changes, would you call them?
Out of frustration of George and I,
Okay.
it was cosmetic changes.
Okay. No changes to the actual structure of the home or the placement of items in the backyard, like the pools and the shed?
Absolutely not.
All right. Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce BU for identification into evidence.
What says the defense?
No objections, Judge.
You received the state's numbered.
Permission to publish this item, Your Honor? Now, as it's published, there are the annotations that you made while you were talking about the photograph. Right there where I put the red dot, what is it that you describe as being different from 2008? Just briefly.
In 2008, we had grass, and now we have pavers. We have a paver patio.
Okay. And then this X that you made, where I made the second red dot?
We had grass, and we put bark chips and stepping stones.
All right. Just to limit the amount of maintenance that you have to do with that grass?
Yes, and also for an area for our 2 dogs to relieve themselves.
Okay. And then you have a line heading to a structure on the side of the house. Is that concrete?
Yes, it is now. It used to be lava rock and bark chips. We did that because George used to keep his, at that time, George was keeping his lawn equipment in that shed. And he had to pull it through the mulch, through the chips, and became difficult. So that was something we had intended to do in 2008 and never had a chance. So he went ahead and concreted it last year.
All right. There are 3 sheds on your property?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell the jury from this aerial view where those are?
Our main shed, well, actually, we use them all now as main sheds because they all serve a different function, but this one's our largest shed, and then this one and this one are the same size.
Okay. Is your entire side and backyard fenced?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So the only way to get to your backyard from the front of the house would be how?
Through this gate right here, because this gate right here is locked and totally blocked. There's, the shed is right up against it, and we did that on purpose so we wouldn't have anybody, come in that way. So there is a lock gate right here.
All right. How do you lock it?
On the inside of the gate, there's a latch, and then we have a padlock on it.
Okay. What is this item on the right side of your yard?
This item right here with the green roof is Caylee's Playhouse.
Okay. And this item, if you could just describe for the record.
That is our above-ground swimming pool
Okay. How long have you had the above-ground swimming pool?
since 2002.
If I may have AN as in Nancy for identification. I'll have to unpublish. Do you see AN?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recognize it?
Yes, ma'am.
And what do you recognize that to be?
The front of our house in 2008.
All right. Your Honor, this has previously been introduced as States 1 in evidence, if I may publish it while she
You may.
discusses it. All right. You said this was the front of your house in 2008?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The item that I've put a red square around, is that the front door that you described?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, if we could unpublish and if I could have AO for identification. Do you recognize what is depicted in AO?
Yes, ma'am.
What is that?
That would be, if I'm facing my home, it would be the left-hand side of my house, facing the only gated entranceway to my backyard, and that was taken in 2008.
Is that a fair and accurate depiction of the condition of the home in mid-July of 2008?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce AO for identification as the state's next numbered exhibit in evidence.
What says the defense?
No objections, Judge.
We received an evidence that states numbered.
Permission to publish?
You may.
What is this item that I've placed an X on?
That is our garage door.
Okay. If I could unpublish that one and have AP for identification. Do you see AP for identification on the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know what that depicts?
Yes, if you come through the gate, that is a pathway to our backyard.
Does that photograph fairly and accurately represent the condition of that portion of your yard in mid-July of 2008?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce AP for identification into evidence as the state's next numbered exhibit in evidence.
What says the defense?
No objections, Your Honor.
Be received in evidence as states numbered.
Permission to publish?
You may.
What are these two items that I've marked with a red line on the right side of the photograph?
Those are our other two sheds.
Okay. What is, let's see if I can. Oh. I'm not doing this very well. All right, I've put an arrow on a structure beyond the sheds. Can you see what that is in the photograph?
Yes, behind the plant is our swimming pool.
Right. How high is the, I'll call what I will call the lip of the pool, the top edge of the pool off of the ground?
Somewhere, it's a little bit over 4 feet. It's under 5 foot,
All right. How tall are you?
5'4".
Okay. If you are standing next to it, how high up on your person is that lip of that pool?
It depends on where I'm at in the yard because our yard slopes. So if I'm on level ground right next to it, probably just above my breast area, about my chest.
Chest high?
Yes.
What would be the lowest point on your person where the lip of the pool would be depending on the slope of your yard?
Probably chin level.
Oh, okay, that would be the
I'm
highest.
below chin. The lowest? If I'm standing on the lowest part of our yard,
Right, you said it's
then it would
sloped.
be higher on me.
Oh, all right.
So it would be just below my chin. It just below my chin.
Okay.
The reason being is because beyond the pool, there's almost a foot difference, a step down. Once you get around the corner, there's a step down. We stop the pool at the edge because when we put the pool in, our yard sloped. So we only leveled it out as far as to the pool, and then we have a patio off of that or a cement slab off of that. So it's down. So it might even be a little bit higher on me. It's probably about maybe a foot difference.
All right, you're talking about as you come around the pool. All right. Let me see if I can fix our discussions and look at the aerial, which is,
If I can,
I don't know. It was is that public? 38 in evidence. We went back to the aerial. You were trying to describe something related to the pool. Using the aerial photograph, can you tell us what you were
yes, ma'am.
indicating?
When I was talking about it being like mid-sternum, it would be from this area or this area around the pool. But right on the pool's edge, if you were on the outside of the pool, you would be standing on a concrete patio. And that is approximately a foot down from the level of the pool, from the bottom of the pool. We made a retention wall there. So this area right here is a cement patio. So if I'm standing on that patio and you're asking me where the pool level is, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it's probably be up to my nose. There's a difference.
Okay. All right. If I could have AQ, unpublish that one and have AQ for identification. AQ. Let me switch then to AR. Do you see the photograph?
Yes, ma'am.
What is it depicting?
If you would, as soon as you would step out of our screen patio's here, there's a door that's off of here. If you'd step out, this is pavers.
Okay, let me.
It's actually our backyard.
All right. Does it fairly, we got to get it
I understand.
in before we can really talk about it. Does it fairly and accurately depict the condition of your backyard in mid-July of 2008?
Yes, ma'am, it does.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce AR for identification into evidence.
What says the defense?
No objections, Judge.
You received the evidence as,
Permission to publish?
you may publish.
All right. Now that 41 is in evidence, you were explaining something on the right-hand side of the photograph over here.
Yes, that is our screened-in patio.
All right. What is this, now that we're not looking at it from an aerial point of view?
That's Caylee's playhouse.
Off in this direction?
That would be, if you followed that arrow, that's the other property line. That fence would lead us back to the other shed on the side of our house, where Caylee's room and Lee's room would be, and the kitchen would be.
All right, if we could unpublish and show AS for identification? Do you see AS?
Yes, ma'am.
Does that photograph fairly and accurately depict the portion of the yard that we've been describing from another angle?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce AS for identification into evidence.
What says the defense?
No objections.
You received an evidence that states numbered.
Permission to publish that.
You may.
Mrs. Anthony, the items that are shown in this section of the yard, what are those?
Those are Caylee's. Caylee's sandbox and Caylee's picnic table. And you can see Caylee's mailbox.
Right here's the mailbox.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, if we unpublish that one, and if I could have AT for identification. Does AT fairly and accurately depict a
Yes, ma'am.
section of the yard
Yes,
in
ma'am.
July of 2008?
Yes,
Your Honor,
ma'am.
at this point, I would seek to introduce AT for identification into evidence.
Any objections from the defense?
No, sir.
You received an evidence as,
Permission to publish this one, Your Honor.
may.
Mrs. Anthony, the playhouse, what kind of a floor is on that?
It's patio stones. It's the square patio stones. We made like a floor. We didn't want her to be on grass when she was sitting in there playing. So we didn't pour concrete because we didn't know if we'd ever move it. So we just put patio stones down.
How long had that been in your yard?
We bought it like a month before her second birthday, for her birthday. And we wanted her to have it for her party because she had another little playmate coming over, and we thought it might be something that they could do and play. And plus, it was something we wanted her to have.
All right. When you talk about we, who are you referring to?
George and Casey and I.
Did you all purchase that?
Actually, Lee and I went and actually purchased it, but we had looked at it and talked about it because it was quite expensive, and we wanted to fit it in our budget. It was an expensive little house.
All right. All of the landscaping around the house, did you do that?
George and I did that.
The mailbox, did you buy that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. If we could unpublish that item and have AU for identification. Okay, do you see AU?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recognize what's shown in that photograph?
Yes, ma'am. It's our living room, and you can see part of our dining room, and you can see at the back is our screen patio.
Okay. Does that photograph fairly and accurately depict that portion of your house as it appeared in mid-July of 2008?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce AU for identification into evidence as the state's next numbered exhibit.
What says the defense?
No objections.
They be receiving evidence that states numbered.
Permission to publish that item. All right, Mrs. Anthony, you described that as your living room and a portion of your dining room. Is this how you get out onto your patio?
That's our most frequently used entrance, yes.
All right. You said that there is a lock on that door. Where would that appear on the door?
Right there.
Okay. If we could zoom into that portion of the photograph, let me get rid of the annotation. All right, what kind of a lock is that?
It's a latch. It goes up and down. I'm sorry.
Do you need a second?
Take a recess.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we're going to take a recess to a quarter till the hour. I'm going to ask you not to discuss this case among yourselves. Please remember all of my previous admonitions. We'll be in recess. Okay, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mrs. Anthony, when we broke, we were talking about the sliding glass doors in your home, and you had put an annotation on the photograph that I removed. But we were talking about this area of the door is some sort of lock.
Yes, ma'am. It's on the handle.
All right. And how would you describe how that lock works?
It just, you flip it up and down.
Okay. Now, do all of your sliding glass doors have a screen door behind them?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. In this photograph, the screen is open.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that the normal position that you keep those parts of the door in, open when the glass is closed?
It depends on the time of year and the time of day, and if we're going in and out a lot or whatever. It just depends. If it's in the summer and the air conditioning's running, we leave the sliding glass door closed while we're coming and going in through the patio. But if we're out in the yard and we're going back and forth, instead of having the screen thing, we just would leave it open instead of having opening two doors. I mean, it just made sense.
All right. So if you're already outside on the other side of the door, you leave the screen open. Otherwise,
Yes.
your practice is to keep it closed.
Right, unless it was a cool day and we weren't worried about the air conditioning and the heat coming in the house, we would probably just leave the sliding glass door open and the screen door closed.
All right. Is this the handle to the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a lock on that as well?
There is, but I don't think we've ever used it.
Okay. Now, once you're out onto this patio, are you immediately able to get into the backyard, or are there other obstacles?
There are two doors. Soon as you open the sliding glass door,
Do you want me to
there's
take it
a door.
Maybe we can take it off of Zoom. I don't know that that'll help, but maybe not. All right, as soon as you open the sliding glass door, you said there is a door.
Do you want me to mark the screen?
If you see it on there.
There's a door right, it's not letting me, there. There's a door right here that there's no obstacles. And then if I walk this way, there's a door there and there's a clear path.
All right. Are those storm doors of some sort?
They're just
Screen doors.
screen doors.
Okay. What sort of open-close mechanism is on those?
There are locks on those.
Okay. On the handle?
Yes.
How high is the handle?
Normal height,
On you? Where would it be?
maybe at my hip, possibly my hip.
Okay.
I never really, or waist, I never really figured that out.
Right. Okay. You mentioned that there are 3 sets of sliding doors to the backyard: master bedroom, living room, and then kitchen.
Yes, ma'am.
Are they all identical?
Yes.
Okay. Same locking mechanism on all of them?
Yes.
Do you have anything blocking the sliding glass door in your bedroom that would prevent easy access to it?
Possibly at times we might. I mean, not on a normal condition, but it just depends on what we were doing and what I had in my room. I keep a chair right there, and sometimes the chair is in the way of the door, but we are able, it would be really easy to move the chair out of the way. It's kind of in the corner, but if I was storing something, I might put it in that right there
All right.
because it would be out of the pathway of normal walking.
When you come out of the sliding glass door in the master bedroom, where are you?
Onto the screen patio.
Okay. Do you normally use that sliding glass door in your bedroom?
Sometimes it depends, like if I've been in the pool and quick access to the master bathroom, I might come in that way. If it's, if just depends on if I needed something out of my bedroom, it would make more sense to go straight there than go in through the living room and walk around. But if I wanted to go to the kitchen, I would come back through. The kitchen one was normally locked, so I couldn't come back in unless we were cooking out and we wanted to get in and out of the kitchen from the backyard. So,
Would you say that back in 2008, or even today, that this door that we have the picture of here is the main door that you use to access the back of your house?
oh, absolutely.
I could unpublish those and have AV for identification. Do you see AV?
No, not yet.
Oh, sorry. I think I might actually be getting the hang of this.
Now I see it.
But all right, do you recognize that as an accurate photograph of a portion of the interior of your home as it existed in mid-July of 2008?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce AV for identification into evidence as the next numbered state's exhibit.
What says the defense?
No objections.
We received an evidence that states numbered.
All right. Permission to publish that, Your Honor, to the jury.
You may.
Mrs. Anthony, can you tell us what we're looking at in 45 in evidence?
If you would come through our front door, as soon as you come in, we have a little foyer, and if you would look to your right, like, if you're coming in through my front door and you look to our right, this is the wall to the living room, and then this hallway leads to the bedrooms and a bathroom.
All right. This blue line here,
Yes,
whose room is that?
that's Caylee's.
What steps did you take to childproof your home since you had a toddler in there?
Casey went out and purchased doorknob devices where you place over the doorknobs that you would have to squeeze and turn. I had a difficult time with them. We put them on all the doors that led out of the house and into the other bedrooms and places, and we put the outlet protectors in, and rearranged where things were kept as far as items under cupboards and things like that. So we did locks on bathroom, things that we could do, just tried to, the normal toddler things.
Okay. Now, in June of 2008, Caylee was how many months old? 34? Sound accurate?
Yes.
All right. And I imagine at that age, she's pretty mobile, obviously.
Yes.
Okay. Where did she sleep?
Almost all the time in Casey's room. Occasionally she would take a nap in her room. It just depended on, at that time, it was all in Casey's room or an occasional nap in her room.
Okay. Was she verbal?
Absolutely.
Just a few words, complete sentences? How would you describe her ability to communicate?
Depending on what she wanted to tell you, she could do a paragraph. She could tell you a story.
Okay. Was her language easy to understand? Sometimes you don't get kids that anyone can understand, but they're close relatives.
Once in a great while, I might have to ask her what she was talking about, but you learn your child's speech, and being around Caylee all the time, I pretty much knew what she was going to say. Okay. Or what she said, I'm sorry.
Now, Caylee lived with you from the time she was born,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
You had mentioned when she was born that Lee was in the house for a period of time.
Yes, ma'am.
Did Casey also live with you her entire life?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. To include the entire time that Caylee was with you.
Yes, ma'am.
Was there ever a time after Caylee's birth, but before mid-June of 2008, that Caylee was away from the home for overnight, 2 nights, 3 nights, any extended period of time?
No, I would always see her. I saw her just about every day. She might spend the night, but I would see her the next day or prior in that day. I don't think I ever went more than 24 hours without seeing Caylee.
Your birthday is at the beginning part of June,
Yes, ma'am.
correct? In June of 2008, your birthday, did you take vacation that week?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you remember the dates?
I'm not sure if we left Monday or Tuesday of that week. And if I saw a calendar, I could give you the date. I know my brother's wedding was, I think, Thursday or Friday, whatever the 8th of June was. We left a few days prior.
I've moved to 2008, June of 2008, not 2005.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I was thinking of 2005.
Okay.
Yes, in 2008. I usually would take my birthday week off, and I was off.
However, those dates fell the week.
Yeah, I think my birthday was like on a Thursday, so I finished the Friday normal business hours Friday before my birthday, so I had the entire week of my birthday off.
Did you spend it with Caylee?
Not as much as I wanted to, but for the most part, I did.
By the time of Father's Day, which was June 15th of 2008, did you have Caylee with you?
As far as,
On Father's Day of 2008?
yes.
Okay. What were your plans that day?
For Father's Day, George had to work, and he was going to go in early, I believe, and the kids had plans, so I just decided to take Caylee up to see my father in Mount Dora, visit him in the nursing home.
Now, when you're talking about your kids having plans, you're referring to Lee Anthony
Yes,
and Casey Anthony.
yes.
Did you think that either one of them were working that day?
I believe that Casey was working that day, and Lee had already moved out, and he and Mallory probably had something to do.
All right. Since he's not in your home, you didn't keep tabs on his day-to-day.
No, we weren't
Business.
planning, no, I'm sorry, no.
All right. You indicated that George, your husband, had to work that day. Was it his regular 3 to 11 shift?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you went to Mount Dora with Caylee.
Yes.
Do you remember the time frame that you were there?
Mid-morning to, probably 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay.
Between that time frame, that's about a 50 to 55-minute drive to Mount Dora. And I believe we arrived in Mount Dora just before noon, 11:30 or so. And then we left my mom's home somewhere around 2:30, I believe, somewhere around in there.
All right. While you were at the nursing home visiting your father for Father's Day, did you take photographs and video of Caylee?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay. If I could have LK for identification, please. Can you see LK for identification?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. What do you recognize that photograph to be?
That's our Caylee.
When was that taken?
That was taken on the 15th of June, 2008.
Okay. At the nursing facility?
Yes, ma'am.
Does that photograph fairly and accurately depict Caylee Marie Anthony on June 15th of 2008?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce LK for identification into evidence as the state's next numbered exhibit.
What says the defense?
No objections.
It'll be received in evidence as states numbered.
Permission to publish, Your Honor.
You may publish.
The items that are in front of Caylee there, these are items you brought with you.
Yes, ma'am.
I know we talked about Caylee being 34 months old. How tall was she?
She was over 3 feet tall. She was somewhere between 38 and 40 inches. She was over, above my
I'm
waist.
sorry.
I'm sorry. She was over 3 feet tall. She was somewhere above my waist level.
The top of her head,
Yes.
just above your waist
Yeah,
level?
I think she was somewhere between 38 and 40 inches.
Okay. And how much do you believe she weighed at that point in time?
I can't remember. Maybe 30, somewhere in the range of maybe 30 pounds.
Still light enough for you to carry her?
If I had to.
Once you left the nursing home, where did you all go?
We went to visit my mom. We went to have lunch with my mother at her home.
Okay. And did you ultimately return back to your home on Hope Spring Drive?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When do you think that was?
Somewhere, I think we left my mom's house more like 3:30. I believe we got to our house sometime around 4:30ish. I know it was before 5 o'clock, but it was between 4 and 5. I'm pretty sure we got home.
Was it just the two of you at that point, or had your daughter Casey arrived?
And it was just Caylee and myself.
Right. So what did the two of you do?
We got home, we put her things away, and she wanted to go swimming, and I told her she had to get something to eat first. So because she didn't eat very well at my mom's. So we went ahead and I can't remember what I fixed her, but we went out in the kitchen and I fixed her something to eat, and then I know we got our bathing suits on, and at some point we went out and went in the pool and, was playing in the pool.
All right. Since you have an above-ground pool, how do you access it?
There is a ladder that attaches to the pool that you put on the pool, and then you're able to climb into the pool with the ladder.
All right. Is this something that has to be done every time you use the pool? You have to put a ladder on it, or is it a permanent fixture on the pool?
Part of the ladder is permanently attached with bolts. The part where the top of the ladder, where the platform is bolted into the top of the lip of the pool, and then the steps inside the pool is attached to that. That's all one piece. And then there's a detachable exterior ladder. Prior to Caylee becoming a toddler, we just, usually left it attached, except when we didn't swim, during the months where we didn't swim, we took it off. And we took the whole ladder out just to it would be easier to clean that way. But during the season that we used the pool, we would have it, attached. But once Caylee became a toddler, then we took the exterior ladder off, and we just set it beside the pool.
All right. Is that where it would be stored every time the removable exterior portion was taken off?
Yeah, we just set it right next to the pool, laid it on its side. There was a spot there that we just set it down, laid it there, so it'd be convenient to put it back on when we wanted to have access to the pool.
All right. That section of the pool where you would affix the ladder, how high up on you is the lip?
Again, the lip is about mid-sternum,
Chest high.
chest area.
All right. So if you are standing right at the area where the ladder is, you can see the surface of the pool
Yes,
at
ma'am.
your height.
Yes, ma'am.
The ladder, how big is it? The removable part of it, how big is it?
Well, it would probably be a little bit taller than me, because it's on a slant to walk up, and I think there's 3 or 4 steps before you get to the platform on the ladder. I think there's 3 rungs, 3 or 4 rungs.
Okay. Is that ladder cumbersome?
No.
Heavy?
It's heavy enough that a small child couldn't pick up, but it's not something that I had difficulty putting on and off.
All right. So on June 15th, when you and Caylee decide that you're going to go swimming in the early evening, did you take the ladder from its position and put it onto the pool?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay. Does Caylee have to wait patiently
Yes, ma'am.
until you complete that process?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And do you get into the pool first?
No. At that time, because of her age, she was able to climb the steps. So I would stand behind her and hold her as she climbed each step. And then when she reached the top, I would make her sit down on the platform, and I was climbing behind her. And with one hand, I would hold on to her while she's holding on to the bars on that, and then I would go around her and get into the pool. And then she usually would wait and then jump into the pool into my arms.
Why did you have to hold her?
I probably didn't have to hold her. That was just something I did because I didn't want her to fall. If she would have fallen, she would have hit her head on either the retention or one of the bushes or something there, and it would be a distance. So it's like when you're helping an older person, you just start kind of right there. And if they're walking down a step, it's just something you do. And with her, it was just something I did, like holding her hand when you're walking in a store. So it was just a natural thing. I guess I didn't even, it's not something you consciously think about, or I guess you do, you don't want them to fall. But it's just is my nature to do that.
All right, to provide that support.
Right, to
while
protect
she
her.
climbed.
To protect her.
Did you spend a lot of time in the pool?
That afternoon we did. We were in there probably hour and a half, somewhere, at least an hour. I know we were in the pool.
All right. Did she wear the floaties on her arms, or do you have some other suit that she would put on that would help keep her buoyed?
At that age, she had an actual life jacket. that we put on over her bathing suit, and she was wearing her life jacket.
While you were swimming in the pool, did your daughter Casey come home?
Yes, she did.
Okay. Did she get into the pool with you?
No, she did not.
Right. At that point, did you all decide to take Caylee into the house?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How did Caylee get out of the pool?
I told Casey that it was time to take Caylee, and Casey had inquired about coming into the pool herself, and it was getting cold, and I knew Caylee had been in there a while. So I told Casey that Caylee had had enough. I mean, I felt that Caylee had enough, and that I asked her to go get Caylee ready for her shower. So Casey came out with a towel, and she received Caylee as she was coming down the ladder. I had taken I think I took Caylee's bathing suit off in the pool, her life jacket, and her bathing suit off in the pool. It was kind of like a fun thing to do for Caylee, to be naked in the pool for a minute, and then her mom received her with a towel and then took her in the house.
Okay. You got out at that time, I imagine?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And what did you do with the removable portion of the ladder?
I took it off as usual and placed it on the side, and gathered Caylee's bathing suit and life jacket and grabbed my towel and proceeded to go inside the house.
Anything else happened that evening?
Yeah, that evening was a very emotional and a very special evening. So I recall it like it happened yesterday.
What is it that you're referring to?
Part of the reason that I wanted to take Caylee to see my father that day is the week prior they had called hospice in, and my dad was not doing very well. And I usually would take my camera to, whenever I went to see him anyway, especially when Caylee was there. But I wanted to document that day because at that time I didn't know if it would be the last time Caylee would see her great-grandfather. And I wanted to document that time. So after Caylee's bath, I had told Casey about the videos that I had taken and the pictures, and I told her about our day, and I was excited to show Casey. So the three of us sat in Lee's old room at the computer, and we watched the videos, and Casey and I cried, and Caylee was with us. And she didn't really understand why we were crying, but it was a very special moment that the three of us had shared.
So what you're telling us is that the video and photographs, including the one that we saw displayed of Caylee, were placed on the computer from the actual camera and video camera.
My camera is a video camera. My
Okay.
camera takes video, so it was just one camera. But yes, the still pictures and the video, we plugged it into the computer.
All right.
And
And
watched.
transferred it onto the.
I'm
actual
not
computer.
sure if I'm sure we probably did transfer at that time. I don't know if Casey ended up saving it or whatever. That part didn't stick out in my head. That wasn't something that I recall exactly how that was, but I know there's a cable, and I believe she probably did save those pictures on the computer at that time.
Okay. Eventually, your husband returned home?
Yes, that was later that evening after Casey and Caylee and I went to bed because I had to get up early the next morning. So I believe I was in bed when he came home that night.
All right. The next day being Monday, you had to go to work?
Yeah, I had to go to work early. Mondays are very busy for us at work, and we switch off early weeks, and I was the early supervisor that day that had to be in. So I like to get there normally a half hour prior to my normal time, which is anywhere between 8 and 8:30 is when I would start work. But that day, I knew I had a lot of stuff going on, so I wanted to be there around 7:30.
Okay.
So I left about 7 that morning.
After June 15th of 2008, did you see your granddaughter Caylee again?
No, ma'am, I did not.
When you left for work in the morning on June 16th of 2008, did you believe Caylee to be in your house?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
On that day, did you believe that your daughter had a job?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
What did you believe her job to be?
She was an event coordinator at Universal Studios.
And what did you believe she did as an event coordinator for Universal Studios?
If Universal was doing Mardi Gras or had celebrities come in or whatever was going on, there's always different things going on at Universal. She worked kind of behind the scenes helping set up a specific event, and her hours would be different. Sometimes she worked during the day, sometimes she worked evening, and quite often I believe she worked in the evenings.
And you believed this, or did you believe this because that's what she told you?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you see any other evidence of her working at Universal Studios that led you to believe that it was true?
Yes, I mean, there was her lanyard that she would wear.
I'm sorry, did you say lanyard?
Yes, her lanyard. And I had seen text messages from her boss and emails from her work, her employer to her.
All right, the lanyard that you're talking about is something to wear around the neck, has an identification attached to it.
Yes, ma'am.
Did it have her picture?
Yes, ma'am.
And anything else? Did it say Universal Studios on it?
Yes, ma'am.
Did she have and continue to wear a name tag?
She had it attached to her, on her lanyard, she had it, at that time, she had a shamrock necklace type thing that she had her lanyard attached, and her name tag occasionally would be on that. And sometimes there would be a different name on the name tag.
Other than Casey?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you ask about that?
Yes, ma'am. She said it was common for the employees to switch names occasionally. She said it was just something that they did.
Just being funny?
Yes.
Okay. Were you familiar with the fact that Universal employees would always have their name displayed on whatever uniform they were wearing?
Yes, ma'am. I had been to Universal before, and I saw Casey at work before, and I had seen pictures of her at work before with her ID and her badge. So, and I've been to the park several times, so yes, I'm aware of that.
All right. Those photographs that you mentioned of Casey at work and the times that you went there, or time that you went there and she was working, were those before Caylee was born?
Yes, ma'am.
After Caylee arrived, did you believe that your daughter went back to work at Universal Studios?
After Caylee was born?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, she did.
Okay. And you believe this because of the lanyard?
No, I believe it because she did go back to work after. She went back to work 3 months after Caylee was born, back to Human Resources, and she was still employed at Universal Studios at that time.
Okay. And you believe that that continued all the way through July 15th of 2008, correct?
No, there was a period of time when Casey said that she had I guess in her position there was like 3 reprimands and then you'd have to leave. And I remember her telling me that her boss didn't want to let her go. And I had spoken to her boss. I had met her bosses there, and so there was a period of time that I knew she wasn't employed, but then a few months later, I was under the impression she was able to go back.
Okay. You said that you saw emails from bosses or managers regarding events that Casey was supposed to work?
Actually, that was the emails I saw, I believe, were from Hard Rock Cafe. I guess there was some relationship that she had with them and coordinating the events at Universal, and it was specifically from a supervisor that she had through Hard Rock Cafe.
All right. This was an email that Casey printed and showed you?
Yes, ma'am.
Was this in 2008?
I believe so.
After printing and showing you these emails, she left the residence as directed in the email, and you thought she went to work?
Well, yes, and the emails were telling her what was going to happen and kind of what they were going to do. And during the spring of 2008, it's just an email telling her about an event that was happening, and it was to her and several other people. And yeah, she normally went to work.
Okay. Would you watch Caylee?
Yes.
Okay. How about when you were unavailable, would Caylee be watched by her grandfather, George?
It depended on what day of the week it was and what her hours were. If I was off or the weekend or in the evenings, I would generally be the babysitter. If George was not working, then she would often leave Caylee with George. Or if Casey and I wanted to spend the day together, one time we went to Universal Studios for Halloween Horror Nights and stuff. And, a lot of times we'd go shop and just have a girl day. And George naturally volunteered to watch Caylee. But if I was working or George was working, if it was during the day, then she made arrangements for someone else.
Okay. On June 16th of 2008, did you believe that your daughter Casey had a babysitter for her daughter Caylee?
Yes, ma'am.
Who did you believe that babysitter to be?
At that time, on June 16th, I believed it was Zanny.
Who's that?
Zanny, Casey, she was a friend of Casey's, and she would refer to her once in a while as the nanny. And she was one of the primary people that Casey would leave Caylee with. That was my impression.
All right. Did you have a full name at that point?
No, I did not.
Beginning to mid-June of 2008?
No, I did not.
How long had Casey been talking about Zanny?
I believe it was in the spring of 2006. Casey was still engaged to Mr. Grund, and I remember Casey talking about one of her friends that worked at Universal as an IT person, and she said that Zanny was his girlfriend, and she watched his child, and he had offered his girlfriend to, if Casey ever needed a fill-in, if either Jesse or his family or Casey's best friend Lauren at the time was outside the family, the primary primary babysitter for Casey, as a fill-in, if she ever needed anybody, that could be somebody that she might be able to use as a babysitter.
All right. The coworker that you're referring to is whom?
Jeff Hopkins.
Okay. So sometime in the spring of 2006 is when you first heard of Zanny being a possible babysitter for Caylee,
Yes, ma'am.
and that there was an association between Zanny and Jeffrey Hopkins.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Can I ask you for a
Do you need a-
favor? Can you turn
Only
this,
the judge can give favors.
sir? Can I have her take the screen down? I can't
Yes.
look at my granddaughter
I'm
without
sorry.
getting upset, and
Can
I'm
we-
trying very hard not to cry. Thank you.
I don't. Oh, thank you.
It's hard to keep it out of my peripheral.
All right. You had mentioned another individual by the name of Lauren.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Who is that?
The person I was referring to in that statement was Lauren Gibbs, one of Casey's best friends at that time.
This is somebody that you know,
Yes,
that you've met,
yes,
that you would recognize were you to see her again,
yes,
that you could describe for anyone if necessary.
yes, ma'am.
Did you know where this Lauren lived?
At that time, yes.
All right. When we refer to, or when you refer to Zanny, is this a person that you ever met?
No, ma'am.
Is this a person that you've ever seen a picture of?
No, ma'am.
Would you be able to describe Zanny from your own independent observation to anyone who asked?
I never had an observation, so I couldn't describe it, no.
Okay. Did you know where this Zanny was supposed to have lived back in 2006, 7, and 8?
There were different places that Zanny had resided. When I first heard about her, she was supposed to be living on one of the student living quarters or apartments close to UCF, in the same complex that Jeffrey Hopkins lived. So it would, I'm not sure exactly which, apartment complex at that time, but that's where she said she lived.
She, being your daughter, told you?
Yes, that's where Casey told me that Zanny lived. It's off of Alavia, close to the University of Central Florida.
Okay. And it was your understanding, based on what your daughter told you, that this Zanny moved around?
Yes, quite frequently.
Okay. But you never had the opportunity to go pick up Caylee from Zanny's or to drop her off at Zanny's,
No,
correct?
the opportunity never arose where I had to do that.
Okay. Did you request or require your daughter Casey to contribute in any way to the maintenance of the home?
Not financially, but I expected Casey to help around the house with laundry, cleaning, cooking, especially taking care of her room, Caylee's room, bathrooms, just normal things. And she used to help, George with yard work, and Casey pitched in. I mean, it was, I didn't really have to ask her to, but that was the requirement for the kids, period. So, yes.
All right. If you were going to have either of your kids as adults living in your home, you wouldn't ask them for money, but you wanted them to pitch in.
Yes, I was more lenient with Lee than Casey.
Okay. Would Casey get, aside from wearing a lanyard, would she get dressed and appear to go to work?
Depends on the days. I mean, there were times that she would come to my office and she'd be fully dressed, or she said she had clothes with her. Or if I got home, she always had extra clothes with her, either in her possession walking out, or I know in her car. And most of the time she was dressed as if she was ready to go to work.
This Zanny individual that we discussed, did you ever find her?
No.
Were you looking for her?
Yes.
Until when?
Well, before I answer, can you qualify the time that I'm talking about?
Up till today? Are you still looking for
Are we
Zanny?
talking from the 15th of July? Because I never looked for her prior to the 15th of July.
All right. Of 2008?
Yes.
After the 15th of July, you looked for this Zanny person?
Yes, ma'am.
Until when?
Until about 6 weeks ago.
You testified earlier that you left for work on June 16th of 2008 and worked a normal shift? A little earlier than normal, but till...
Normal for a Monday, yes.
Okay. Did you talk to your daughter Casey at all on June 16th of 2008?
Yes, throughout the day, I either left her messages or she left messages. As far as speaking with her, I think we had like a brief conversation late in the afternoon, sometime 4-ish, maybe lasted a few seconds.
Did that conversation include a discussion of her plans for that day?
Yes, she was going to spend the night at Zanny's, and she knew that she couldn't drop Caylee off early at my work. She said she had to, she knew that at that time she had to go into work early, and typically Caylee could spend time with me for the last half hour, but on Mondays are difficult because I have a staff meeting Monday afternoons. And she told me that, she was going to take Caylee to Zanny's, and she would probably just crash at Zanny's when she got off of work because she had an early morning the next day at work. So it would make more sense for her just to go back and spend the night with Zanny and Caylee than to bring Caylee back home. And it kind of made sense to me because Monday is a very late night. I mean, could potentially be a late night for me at work. Sometimes I could work even 7, 8 o'clock, depending on what was going on at work. But typically, I would be out of there by 6 on Mondays.
Okay. Did you understand that your husband, George, had to work that Monday?
Yes, ma'am.
And what shift would he have worked on that Monday? We talked about him working 3 to 11 on Sunday. Would that be true on Monday that week as well?
Yeah, that was his normal day to work.
So with George working from 3 to 11 and the possibility that you would be working late on that day because it was a Monday, neither one of you could have watched Caylee.
I could have watched her later in the, evening, but it just made more sense. Later in the evening, you'd be settling her down for bedtime, and I would have preferred to have her for those few hours, but then for her to get up early, it made sense to me that day to let her stay that night with Zanny and Casey.
Were you expecting that Caylee and Casey would return to the home on Tuesday, June 17th?
Yes.
Did they?
No, they did not.
Did you have any communication with your daughter about her whereabouts or Kaylee's whereabouts on Tuesday, the 17th?
Yes, ma'am.
What were you told?
That they were in negotiations or some kind of a lot of meetings. That was the reason why she had to be there early the next morning too. And she said the negotiations were going to be very lengthy, and she just said that she didn't know when she would get done, and so she was going to stay and keep Caylee there with Zanny, and Zanny had offered to let her stay.
All right. On that Tuesday.
Yes.
So Tuesday night, when Caylee and Casey weren't there, at that point, you had an explanation.
Yes, ma'am. I
That
did.
satisfied you.
Yes, ma'am, I did.
All right. Were you expecting them to return on Wednesday, June 18th?
At part of the day, I thought they would, and then I heard from Casey, and she said that I believe they were headed, I think the negotiations from Hard Rock local Orlando was going to Tampa. And she said, she said it would be fun to take Caylee with her to Tampa so that Caylee, and we had not had an opportunity to take Caylee over to Busch Gardens and see the animals and to the park and things. So Casey said that Zanny was free and was willing to go with her. And one of Casey's coworkers that she had, talked about was going to go ahead and bring her little girl too, so that Caylee would have a playmate.
Did this coworker have a name?
Yes.
Who was that?
Her name was Juliet Lewis.
And did Juliet have a child, you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Named?
Annabelle.
So after being told this, did you have some expectation as to when Caylee and Casey would next be home?
She thought they might wrap up Friday night with their meetings and then spend the day Saturday and come home Saturday evening. So I expected to see them Saturday evening.
Right. So that would be Saturday, June 21st. Does that make sense?
Probably.
Did you talk to Casey on those intervening days between the 18th and the 21st?
Yes, I talk to her every day at some point. I can't remember the actual, I'm sure once during the day and then in the evenings. I mean, that was our normal thing anyway. We always checked in with each other. We just always had our entire lives. We've always checked in with each other.
All right. Did Caylee like to talk on the phone?
Yes, she did.
All right. During that week, were you asking to speak to Caylee on the phone?
Yes, I did.
Were you able to?
No.
Why not?
There was always a reason that Casey wasn't with Caylee. I would be catching Casey at the meeting and Caylee was with Zanny and Annabelle, or in the evenings, Caylee was already in bed or something. There was always a reason why I missed her.
So you waited until Saturday, the 21st, to maybe get to see them?
Yes, that's what I was anticipating.
Okay. And what happened?
Casey had told me sometime, I can't remember if it was during the early morning or mid-afternoon, that they did not finish on Friday. And they were going to be meeting on Saturday a little bit too. So their time where her and Juliet actually got to spend with the girls at the park, they did not get to enjoy the park with them. So Juliet and Annabelle and Casey and Caylee and Zanny, and by that time, I believe one of Zanny's friends was supposed to have met them over there as well. So all of them were supposed to just have a day at the park on Sunday and return home either Sunday night or Monday morning.
All right. So if Saturday was June 21st, Sunday, Monday is the 22nd and 23rd. So having been given that explanation, you did not have any expectation that you would see Casey or Caylee until at least the 23rd, Monday, the 23rd?
I believe so.
Okay. Did that happen?
No.
Why not?
I remember Monday waiting all day at work to hear from Casey, because the last conversation I had with her was to call me as soon as she got home, because I wanted to make sure her and Caylee had come home safely from Tampa. And it was nearly 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was getting quite concerned. I remember calling and leaving messages for Casey, hey, are you home yet? And I was concerned enough to even talk to one of my coworkers about, I was wondering if something had happened. And then later that late afternoon, early evening, I heard from Casey.
Okay. Did she tell you she was home?
No, she did not.
Where did she say she was?
She told me not to panic, but she said that there was a car accident and that I believe Casey and Caylee and Juliet and Annabelle were in Casey's car following Zanny, and I'm not sure, I think it was Raquel Farrell that was with Zanny back from Tampa. And right as they were getting on, I think from 75 or whatever, before they got to I-4, Casey said that Zanny was ahead of her and witnessed Zanny get into a car accident, a pretty serious car accident. And so therefore, she had been all day at the hospital, and that was her first chance to call me and let me know. But she assured me that she and Caylee were perfectly fine.
Did you ask for an opportunity at that point to speak with Caylee? Do you remember?
Yes, but Casey told me she was at the hospital, that Casey was at the hospital, and Caylee was, Caylee was, that day, Caylee was either back at the hotel because she said they had to turn around. No, at that point, I think they were all at the hospital, and someone had taken Caylee and Annabelle to walk around. You know, they couldn't come up. Casey, I think, was still in the emergency room. And Casey, I believe, was calling me from the emergency room area, and they didn't have the girls, the toddlers, around the emergency area. So one of the other girls, either Juliet or Raquel, had the girl somewhere else. So she wasn't in proximity for me to talk to Caylee on the phone.
All right, so you believe that was bad timing again?
Yes.
On June 24th, do you remember an incident involving a shed at your home?
Yes.
Okay. Were you made aware that your husband had contacted the Orange County Sheriff's Office regarding a break-in of the shed?
Yes.
What time do you think he gave you that information?
Right after it happened, I think he called me right around the same time he called the police to report it. I heard in the morning, it was probably between 10 and 10:30, 11. It was in the morning. I remember it was before noon.
Okay. Did you share that information at any point in time on June 24th with your daughter Casey?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Do you remember when?
Shortly after I spoke with George, I spoke with Casey to find out what their plans were and how Zanny was and, what was going on. And just in casual conversation of what was going on, I said, well, do you want to hear something that happened to Dad today? And I said someone broke into the shed and, had stolen his gas cans. And I chuckled, and I can't remember Casey's response or anything, but I remember telling her the story because I thought it was, something that would lighten the day for her, but something that was going on in our lives, just to kind of break the conversation up.
Okay. At some point, did you learn that your husband had seen Casey at the house in the afternoon on June 24th?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did she call you about that?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Who did?
George did.
Did you try to contact her after learning that she was at the house and say, I thought you were in the hospital in Tampa?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
How'd that conversation go?
I asked her, I said, Casey, what were you doing home? I thought you were in Tampa. And she said, Mom, I think they're going to admit Zanny. She has no identification. She didn't have her insurance information or she had her identification, but she didn't have her insurance information with her. And Casey had volunteered to drive to Zanny's apartment to pick up. She had made arrangements with Zanny's mother, sister, brother, a family member, or someone. It could have even been another roommate. I know she made arrangements with someone to get into the apartment and to get Zanny's insurance information. And she told me that she stopped home to get some things because she was headed back. And she didn't know at that point when they would be home. And I said, well, why didn't you bring Caylee back? Because I would take off work to watch her, and then you wouldn't have to worry about Caylee. And she said it didn't occur to her. She wasn't thinking. She was at the hospital, and Caylee wasn't with her, and they needed it. So she just said she just drove home and got it. And she said that she had seen her father, and she told me that she had given him back the gas cans. She explained that she had taken them with her when they were driving to Tampa, when she knew she had to go to Tampa, that she had taken them with her because she thought, just in case, because she said there was something wrong, she thought with her gas gauge, and that sometimes it wouldn't read that it was on empty. And she explained that occasionally she would have to take the can to go get gas, or if she had run out of gas a few times, I guess. So that's the explanation.
Now, did you get that explanation on June 24th?
Yes, ma'am.
At that point, was it your belief that she had not been at the house since June 16th?
Correct.
Did you ask her when it was that she got the gas cans that she took as a precaution?
I didn't think about it because I didn't think it was anything of significance. I did not, at that time, I wasn't thinking about why, I mean, it had no significance to me.
Okay. On June 24th, were you given any indication as to when Casey and Caylee might be returning from Tampa?
Yeah, I asked her why she was doing all this and not a family member of Zanny. I said, it's really not your responsibility to stay there and take care of Zanny. I think your responsibility is to bring Caylee home, because the longer Caylee would stay away in this environment, I didn't think it was a good idea. So I was asking her why, and she said, Mom, Zanny's mother is very ill and she's not able to leave. And I believe she said Zanny's brother was taking, between Zanny's brother and Zanny's sister, between their working and their jobs or whatever, it was their responsibility to care for Zanny's mom. So she really didn't have anything. And her roommate, Raquel, had been hurt. She said she had either fractured or dislocated her shoulder. And Raquel's mom was coming from Jacksonville to pick up Raquel and take her. So Casey felt obliged to Zanny to stay with her. And she kind of wanted Caylee close to her. She just felt like she needed Caylee. So.
Now, by this time, were you missing your granddaughter?
Oh, I started missing Caylee June 16th. So yes, I miss Caylee every day when I went to work, those hours I was at work. So yes, I was missing Caylee very much at that time.
Did you start sleeping with some of Caylee's items?
Yes, I think about that time, or a few days before that, I went and grabbed Caylee's favorite teddy bear. We call him Teddy, and I had Teddy I would cuddle with at night because I was used to cuddling with Caylee and or Casey, or the three of us would usually cuddle at night if she was home. If not, it would be me and Caylee before I went to bed.
Okay.
Verdict, we'll take a 10-minute stretch break at this time.
Yes, sir.
Okay, members of the jury, we'll take a 10-minute stretch break. You may proceed.
Thank you. Mrs. Anthony, when we took the break, we were talking about you were sleeping with a teddy bear.
Yes.
Does that sound right?
Yes.
At some point in time, did you discover that the teddy bear was missing?
Yeah, a few days later, or at some point. I mean, I started sleeping with Teddy probably that weekend, and then after 4 or 5 nights, then I noticed it was missing.
All right. Did you advise your daughter that you were sleeping with Teddy?
Yes. I think. At some point I did. I don't know if I did during that time. It might have been later. I know I advised her, but I don't think I did during that time. I think it was after all of this.
All right. We'll get back to that. Let's talk to the time frame of the end of the week that included the events of June 24th. On June 25th, 6th, or 7th, that would have been Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of that second week since they had been gone. Did you see them?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Okay. Were you expecting a return after the situation with Zanny at the hospital had resolved?
It didn't get resolved until, I believe, late Thursday, I think. They were going to release Zanny, and Casey had said that she had a concussion and there was maybe some internal bleeding, and they wanted to
Zanny.
watch her. Yes. And they wanted to keep her for observation, make sure she didn't, have a hemorrhage and die. So, Casey stayed up there with her, and going back and forth. They were planning on, Zanny got released sometime late Thursday, and I believe they just, instead of driving back late Thursday night, they brought Zanny back to their hotel at the Hard Rock Hotel in Tampa, and was going to come home Friday.
Were you expecting Casey and Caylee to show up then at your home on Friday, June 27th?
I was hoping she'd surprise me at work and just come right to my work and see, bring Caylee up. She would always bring Caylee up to work, and everybody loved to see Caylee too. And it was, my environment, you can bring a child in periodically. We didn't have patients or anything where I worked, so.
Okay. Did that happen?
No.
Do you know why?
I believe sometime in the early afternoon, Casey told me that they had gotten back. She thought she was going to be off, that evening or that afternoon, but she'd gotten back and she was called into work. And so she wasn't going to be, she had to go in for a couple hours, I guess, to be debriefed or whatever on what happened and everything. So she had to go into work for a few hours. So I was supposed to see them at home. When I got home later that evening, they were supposed to be home.
Okay. And did you see them?
No, I did not.
Why not? Do you know?
That evening, Casey called and said that her friend Jeffrey at that time had moved out of state. And in 2008, at that time, I was under the impression that Casey and Jeffrey had dated a period of time. So they were, Casey still, liked Jeff a lot, and she hadn't seen him for a while. And Jeff was in town and staying in Orlando, and he had heard about Zanny and wanted to see how she was. So she wanted to go see Jeff, and Zachary was Jeff's little son, who was a year older than Caylee, and Caylee and Zachary were close friends, and Casey thought it would be fun for Caylee to see Zach. So I'm just the grandma.
Okay. You're referring to Jeffrey Hopkins, the person that you had discussed in earlier testimony that had actually, to your
Yes.
understanding, introduced Casey to Zanny.
Yes, Jeffrey was very close to Zanny. Yes, he was the one that introduced.
All right. And you also just testified that you believed that Jeffrey was a suitor
Yes.
of Casey's at some point. Is this someone that you've met, Jeff Hopkins?
No, I never met Jeff. There was numerous times when we were supposed to meet Jeff and Zachary over, I would say probably from the, fall of 2006 through 2007 and up until probably November, December of 2007, Casey and Jeff were, close. At times, they started out as a very good friendship, and then it grew into actually, she described that he could be potentially someone that down the road she might want to settle down with. So there was always dates that we were going to do. We were going to go to SeaWorld with the kids and meet him. And In fact, Christmas of 2007, Casey and Caylee and I went to Fashion Square Mall to get pictures of Casey with Santa. And we were going to meet with Jeff's mom, who I wanted to meet, and she was going to bring Zachary. And we were going to have a day at the mall, have lunch, and get the pictures taken with Santa Claus. So, up through that period of time,
All right.
I heard,
From what you're saying, that event with Santa Claus didn't occur?
did not. I mean, it occurred, but not
you.
with them. It occurred with Casey and Caylee and myself. We waited for a while and something happened. I was told that Zachary had an asthma attack and could not come. So we went ahead and had our pictures with Santa and then did our lunch and had a girls' day.
So since Jeff Hopkins and Zachary were in town, Caylee and Casey were where, supposedly?
I can't remember what hotel in town. Somewhere close to Universal. I can't remember for sure if it was Hard Rock, associated with the Hard Rock or whatever. But since Jeff had also worked there too, had connections or whatever. But he was staying at a hotel down by the park, and that's where they were going to meet up. They were going to have dinner, and then Casey was supposed to come home later that night, late that night with Caylee.
Friday the 27th?
Yes.
Okay. Did that happen?
No, it did not.
Do you know why?
I guess Jeff had a rather large, my impression of Jeffrey was that he was independently, he had a trust fund and he was pretty well off. He didn't have to work unless he wanted to. So he had a suite or something, and he invited Zanny and Casey and Caylee to stay with them that night. And then the next day, it would be fun again to take the kids to Universal, and just kind of, they were getting reacquainted, and Casey was jumping at the chance to have Jeff. And Jeff seemed like someone that was very stable from her description of him. And Casey had a very good relationship, is what she said, or the way it was described. And,
Kids the same age.
yes, kids the same age. And I thought, who am I to interfere with that? I mean, Casey's, a grown woman. She was living in my home, but she was an independent person. I mean, it wasn't like she was a kid. Okay. It was,
So you weren't ordering her home?
No, I never did.
You were just trying to find out where they were?
I never had control of Casey, once she was 21, as far as her comings and goings. There was an understanding that we had. We just wanted to know, just out of love, where everybody was at. But it wasn't a mandatory thing that I had to know her every whereabouts. And same way with Caylee. This is her daughter. She could do whatever. I would just love to spend time with them. So naturally, I'd always inquired and would like to spend time with them when they were available. But, she's a young woman that needs to move on with her life, and I am not going to interfere with that. So, yes.
Okay. Now, that Friday, the 27th, was that the last day that you worked for a period of time?
Yes, actually, that was the start of my vacation. I had another vacation. At that point in my time, I think I had 5 or 6 weeks of vacation, and you have to use your vacation. You can't carry it over from year to year where I worked at. And so I would plan.
You took another one?
Yeah, I took another one.
Shortly after the
Yes.
one you had in June?
Yes.
All right, so you were off of work the entire week, beginning June 30th?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, through the 4th of July.
Yes, ma'am.
Were you scheduled to return to work whatever the Monday was after the 4th of July weekend?
I believe I went back on Monday.
Okay. All right, that weekend before your vacation started, where you learned about the party suite at the Hard Rock and all this. Were you expecting that they would be there for an extended period of time?
I would expect that she would have at least come home at some point during that time to get new clothes and to do whatever, but that never happened. And George and I, the weekends were our time. I mean, with him working, and so we spent whatever time together we had. So, I mean, we had other plans too. And I'm not I can't remember if it was that weekend that George and I went to the beach or the following weekend. Sometimes that was our time to go to the beach or me to visit my parents. So we had plans. So it wasn't, I mean, I'm not sitting home during all this time, and that's all I'm doing is waiting for my daughter and granddaughter to come home. I had other things to do in my life too.
Okay. Did you have daily communication as that weekend and then the week that you were off progressed? Did you have daily communication with Casey?
Yes, I don't think there's ever a time where I didn't have communication with Casey, at least once a day during that time, either by a phone call, voicemail, text messages. I had communicated with her at all times, so I thought I knew where she was.
So as we get into the week of June 30th, July 1st, and you are off, did you find out whether or not they were still at the Hard Rock Hotel in Orlando?
Oh, I'm trying to think where. I mean, at that point, I believe she was headed back to work on Monday, and Zanny was gonna watch Caylee Monday. I don't know. I'm sorry if I can collect my thoughts for a moment. I know I was expecting to watch Caylee, from on my vacation. And I can't remember what excuse or where she said she was at that point, if they were still hanging with Jeffrey or not.
Okay. Now, since you were off, you thought if Casey's working, no need to have Zanny, who was just in some sort of accident, watching Caylee, that you wanted to do that for your daughter.
Right.
Okay. Did you express that to her?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And were you able to do that? To watch
No.
Caylee that week that you were off?
No.
Why not?
My memory serves me, Casey was working on an event. Now it's starting to come back to me. Casey was working on an event that had to do with, there was set up for kids. Sometimes she would work with Make-A-Wish Foundation and things like that, and different things. And there was a like a pool party event that they were having for children on site. And she said that it would be a fun event for Caylee to be at. And I'm not sure if Zach was there with Jeffrey or not, but Annabelle was going to be there with Juliet. And it was a day at the park where the kids could play in the pool and see characters and different things. So I asked if I could come, and she said no. It was kind of just like a reservation, and she said she hadn't planned, but because of Caylee being hers, I couldn't get in. I couldn't, because I had said, well, I would love to go and watch Caylee and, be a part of it and take pictures and stuff, but she said no. And I asked her who was watching Caylee, if she was working, and she said that that was an organized group, and that, there would be people that she trusted that would watch the children during this. And then she was able to come down periodically through the day, and she would be able to check in with Caylee, So I just did things that I needed to get done during that time.
All right. So as you approach the July 4th weekend, you thought Caylee was being entertained at a pool party on Universal property.
Yes, ma'am.
How far is Universal Studios from your home on Hope Spring?
Depends on traffic. Anywhere from a 20-minute to a 30-minute, if it's normal traffic, 30-minute drive.
Right. At some point in time, did you decide that you were going to drive out to Universal Studios?
Yes, ma'am.
When was that?
I believe it was July 3rd.
All right. And what prompted that?
Earlier that day, I had some issues, and I really wanted to talk to Casey about those issues, and I really wanted to see Caylee. And I couldn't see, I wanted to spend at least one day with her, and I hadn't seen her for so long. So I talked to Casey earlier, and Casey said she was, at Universal. So
Let me just stop you there. The issues that you said that you had, were those money issues involving Casey that you wanted to talk to her about?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you talked to her on the phone.
Yes, ma'am. It was.
Did that resolve the money issues?
No, I talked to her on the phone to find out where she was. I didn't want to discuss the issues on the phone with her. I wanted to do that face to face. So I decided when I left the bank to go ahead, since she said she was at Universal, I figured I'm just going to go ahead and drive to Universal Studios. So I went ahead and drove to Universal Studios and parked and walked into the park and went to guest services. I didn't buy a ticket. I figured she would just meet me down at guest services, and then I would be able to talk to her and then be able to pick up Caylee from that point. I didn't tell her I was coming.
Okay. So once you arrive at guest services, do you see Caylee and Casey?
No, because what I did when I got to guest services is I called Casey. She didn't know I was going there. So when I got to guest services, I called Casey from my cell phone, and I just waited there and told her that I was there. And I said, can I talk to you? And she told me that she was not there.
At Universal in Orlando.
Right. She was not at Universal Studios.
Okay. Where was she?
She told me that she was actually in Jacksonville, Florida, which came as a complete shock to me. And I said, what are you doing in Jacksonville? And she said that her and she took Caylee with Jeff. She followed Jeff back to his condo in Jacksonville. That was where he was residing, and was going to try to rekindle their friendship, because it had gone very well those days that he was in town. And she didn't want me to know beforehand that she had left town without me seeing her and Caylee. So it was a shock, and I was upset.
So is this mid-afternoon on the 3rd of July?
Yes, it was sometime around 3 o'clock.
Did you think she was in Jacksonville?
I had no idea. I had no idea. When she told me that she was in Jacksonville, I didn't know what to think, because I had realized that she had lied to me for the last couple days, that she was at work and then she was really in Jacksonville. And I didn't know what to make of it. It was just came to me really quick. And I believe she was in Jacksonville, but I didn't believe she was in Jacksonville. I had my reservations. Had my doubts that she was in Jacksonville.
Okay. At some point then, on the day of July 3rd, did you enlist the help of your son Lee in locating your daughter Casey?
Yes, I had actually asked Lee. Prior to that, I reached out to one of our friends that I knew was in Jacksonville to see if he had spoken to Casey and if he was aware, because I knew that one of her very best friends lived in Jacksonville. So I thought if she was headed there, she might alert him. And then
Who would that be?
Ryan Pasley. So I thought maybe he could confirm that she was actually had been there for the last few days. So I was actually at Universal Studios still when I reached out to Ryan.
All right. Was Ryan able to confirm for you that Casey was in Jacksonville?
No, but Ryan thought she was coming because he had spoken to her, Casey, either that morning or the next day, and Casey was arranging to see him. So that kind of put me back to she probably is in Jacksonville, because Ryan said that she had contacted him, that they needed to get together, that she was coming up to Jacksonville during that time frame. He had not seen her yet by the time we had spoken.
Okay.
So at that time, then I started shifting back my thoughts that she probably is in Jacksonville.
Did you call Lee?
I can't remember if I called him or if it was just something. I think I reached out to Lee and just asked him if he had any idea, if Casey had talked to him and, confided in him where she was, and he hadn't spoken to her for a few days.
All right. After 8 o'clock in the evening on July 3rd of 2008, did you create your own MySpace account regarding your current situation?
Yes, I had never been on MySpace before, and Lee told me when I was speaking to my son if he had talked to Casey or whatever, his impression that Casey was not in Jacksonville because of the chatter on MySpace or Facebook, that there was some stuff going on downtown, which I took it to be Church Street because that's where downtown,
Sure.
the action is. And he thought that at one point, one of his friends or one of Casey's friends, Casey and Lee had a lot of mutual friends, that at some point Casey had mentioned to one of the friends that she might be downtown during the 4th of July time frame. And when I had spoken to Lee earlier, he said he would do some research and contact some of their mutual friends to see, or some of Casey's friends, to see if he could find out for sure if Casey was actually in Orlando or in Jacksonville. So when Lee got back to me and told me the possibility that she could be in town, then my mind was just all over the place, and I was just really angry, upset, felt betrayed that I didn't know exactly, because I thought I knew what was going on. So I was just venting. Plus I knew Lee had told me that he had seen new photos of Casey on her MySpace. So I thought if I posted it and asked Casey to be my friend, that she would be the only one that read it. I really didn't know when I created that how MySpace worked.
Right.
So it was a way I had written to Casey, and I was describing in my MySpace to her how she made me feel during that time. And I was hoping that she would contact me through MySpace. And just,
So you created a
yes,
MySpace
I
account.
wanted, right. It was my way of venting without yelling at her and getting on the phone and being upset. And I figured in writing, she would understand my feelings from that day, how I felt being betrayed.
All right. If I may approach the witness with what's been marked as State's Exhibit MG for identification.
You may.
take a look at that item, and exclusive of the exhibit number on it, does it fairly and accurately represent the text of the message that you posted on a MySpace account?
Exclusive of the photo?
We can talk about the photo in a second, but the
Yes.
text itself
Yes.
accurately reflects what
Yeah.
you put on a posting.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
Does the date and time that are affixed there also accurately reflect the date and time that you would have made the posting?
The date is, the time, I would have guessed it might have been a little bit later, but yeah, I mean, I knew it was sometime, in the evening that I did. So that day seemed like a very long day for me.
The photograph that you said is on that exhibit, is that one that you affixed or you believe was placed there later?
It was definitely placed there later because I never posted a photograph. Number one, I didn't know how to.
But the text, the date and time are accurate.
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce state's and chief verification of evidence as the state's next number.
What says the defense?
We would object and ask for further argument on the matter.
Well, let me see it. Short basis of objection. Relevancy, materiality, short form.
403 or 4.5.
Okay. Just a second. Objection sustained.
All right, Mrs. Anthony, after you posted that message on MySpace, did you talk to Casey about it?
Not that day.
How soon after?
I think it was a couple days before she realized that I had sent.
I'm sorry.
I think it was a few days before she realized that I had created the MySpace. I never got a response back from her. And I asked her why she didn't, respond back. And she thought that I was being hard on her writing that. And she...
Relevance.
Overrule at this point.
She had told me she just didn't want to, go on MySpace. I didn't know MySpace was everybody's space. I thought it was secure and that it was just between her and I. And she explained to me that, anybody could get on there or whatever and stuff. I don't know how that all works, even as of today.
Okay. So she acknowledged that she read your posting.
Yes.
Did you discuss with her specifically the things that you had posted?
Briefly, I told her that I felt...
In reference to the court's ruling.
Approach. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the time is now approximately 5 minutes to the hour 1. We will recess for the day and reconvene on Tuesday morning. I know that you had wanted to work. We had cleared a number of hurdles, including opening the facility, but there were some other hurdles we just could not clear. There will be a number of things, hopefully, to keep you busy and entertained. And I think, well, you know what you have planned for this weekend, and I'm not going to venture with that. Please remember my previous admonitions not to discuss this case with anyone. Don't read, watch, or listen to any news accounts of this particular case. Any additional instructions on behalf of the state or the defense? Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, have a great 2 days off.